Hey, 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 you're now tuned in to Underdawg Talk. I'm your host, Eric Jones Jr., the underdog with a heroic heart, and I have conversations with successful underdogs. And today I have Miriam Posluszny. Is that
You
right?
got it. It's
Okay.
Posluszny, yep.
Okay, she just taught me how to say her name because I don't like messing people's names up. That's just something about me. But how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing, I guess, all right. We didn't have kids today, but this weather, if you're listening, and we're in Indianapolis and it's snowing. It just spring forward, but snow can't. I don't know. I don't understand it. I don't understand.
It's the Indiana way.
Yeah, people don't understand. We have bipolar weather. It was just 70 degrees last week and it's snowing. So everybody that's in warm weather, I don't like you right now. Before we get into today's conversation, today's episode is brought to you by Christian Dewan. That's my clothing line, me and my son. And we have t-shirts, hoodies, sweatshirts. If you use the promo code Underdawg Talk, Underdog is spelled UNDDAWG Talk, you get 15% off. And it has the official Underdawg Talk podcast t-shirt and hoodie on there. So use the promo code at christiandewan.com. I did good. I didn't say www. I be feeling old when I say that. So me and Miriam met at a JAG leadership conference, and we were both judges for public speakers for kids. And we had a lot of time to talk, and us and the other people at the table, got to talk and know each other. And that's how we got here today. And she is in human resources. So why is human resources important for a business?
For a business, understanding and appreciating HR is really important from the standpoint that whether you choose to do it or not, you're doing it. Mm-hmm. Human resources, I always think of it as like a teeter-totter on the playground. HR is that fulcrum, that pivot point in the middle that everything balances off of. And on one side, you have the needs of the business, and on the other side, you have the needs of the employees. And it's making certain that those who are in the business are always keeping that perspective of, is it right for the business? Is it right for the employee? How do we keep that balance? And HR is all, sharing what are the risks of the decisions that we make? How does that impact people? And how do we keep everything level in that regard? So once again, whether you're doing it, whether you want to or not, you're hiring people, you're creating job descriptions, you're communicating expectations, you're keeping everyone safe. Those are elements of HR that, especially as you grow, there are levels of complexity that come into that. So, as you have more than one or two staff people, as you get going and you're up there to, 15, 20 people, all of a sudden you have these compliance expectations as well. So, you're having to do things in terms of offering different benefits, communicating different reports and the different reporting expectations, as well as following state and federal law. So as you continue to grow, there are elements of HR that just become increasingly important to avoid fines and also to just really be an employer that you want to be, like to be a genuine, good provider for your people. There are things that you want to consider and do.
So everyone, like you said, that makes sense. Like everyone is kind of doing human resources, especially if you're a small business, even without you knowing, because you got to hire people. Like you said, you got to have like a job description, all these different things. And then as time comes, you got to have the right paperwork to make sure everything's right. So later down the line, you don't, get fined or anything of that sort. So that makes sense. Like when you really think about it, like I've been doing HR for a little while and without even knowing. But then at a certain point, though, like you said, you want to get that certain HR person to come in because that's a lot to deal with and try to run the business. So what made you dabble into HR, or was it something you kind of fell into, like having a job, you just applied, that was it, or was it something that you thought you'd be doing?
I honestly spent a good chunk of my 20s just trying to figure out what career fit with me. I graduated with a major in history and a minor in Russian, and a big question mark of what am I going to do with this in life. I've always been very work-minded and have always had a job. I think back to like fourth grade, I remember working. So it's very instinctive to want to contribute and want to do that in a positive way. When I moved back to Indianapolis in my late 20s, I was looking for a career and something to really dive into. And I found that in training and development, which is an area of human resources that I really connected with. And I spent a good chunk of my time going through understanding the way people communicate and the different ways we see the world. So there are a lot of different perspectives out there, and I really felt comfortable in that space of trying to get uncomfortable. How do I see the world through eyes that aren't my own? How do I teach in a learning style that might not be my preference, but that's somebody else's? So how do I meet them where they are as a learner? And for me, it was many years of getting that connection, building different learning experiences, going into change management from there and understanding how we all react and respond to change. And then from there, I fell into human resources in a generalist capacity. So not only thinking about where we are as learners, where we're responding to the specific job that we're supposed to be doing, but then stepping back up to more of that strategic view, leading an HR group, trying to understand, okay, if we're trying to get to this outcome and doing it under this set of mission and vision, what are the steps that we're going to put in place to get there? And I've had several years of really enjoying that and being a part of the HR world. I shifted my career recently, becoming an empty nester. I had found myself, sort of reevaluating where I am in my career and really reflecting on the fact that I probably have more years behind me at this point than I do ahead of me. And, how do I want to use that time? And really came to a place that I want to be able to support and lift HR teams up from that insurance and benefits side. So really being a resource, being a connector and a networker to bring different learning opportunities to HR groups as we support their insurance and benefit needs with McGohan Brabender. So having a great time doing that, and that's sort of the long stream that is my journey. But once again, have loved so many different experiences, so many challenges that I've had so far.
Yeah, definitely. I like what you said about getting to know like how to work and communicate with different people. And it's funny because I just took a personality like assessment.
Yeah.
And the way that I read how communicate, and it's like, oh, that's why I like, because like, so I'm a teacher. And, they send emails, they might send a text. No, I go to the office. I need to see you face to face. I don't want to read. I need you to explain it to me in the simplest form. Tell me what directly I need to do, and I can go do it. Because you send me this email, I'm not going to understand it. So, and it was like, I told her, I was like, yeah, I just took this assessment. I could show you so you can, help you communicate with me better so you can understand everyone's different. It's like being a basketball coach. It's like every player is different. Some players I can get in their face and rah, rah, rah. Some other players, all right, this is how I need to talk to them. And it's different communicating, even with having these conversations with different people. Some people, we might be up here and be able to like laugh and giggle. Some other people were serious. It just depends on, I think, the person and how you communicate with them. And that's the way of the world. People don't want to communicate anymore. I think it's too much technology and text messaging. I like to text, but when it's a serious conversation, I need to talk to you. I don't want to text. And I think technology has took that communication away from people. But we still have that communication because all the things that you do is behind the scenes. And people don't realize what happens behind the scenes is really what helps with everything else move. Without human resources, without the insurance, without those different things, people wouldn't be able to run the business. So,
I guess just to jump into that point, I mean, there is room to take a signal, or, somebody sends a text, or someone just seems off. That's where you take the time to have the conversation. We have to allow for room and give time to have that dialogue so we can sit down and disagree and have room and space to say, I don't agree with your point of view. I want to try and understand it better. And that's where, leaders coming to HR discussions, having that exchange back and forth, it starts with not saying, how could you be late, but why were you late? What's happening, what's going on? We're seeing a pattern. Take me through that. Take me through where you are and what you might need. And having those types of discussions to really build a work environment that's going to be positive, and once again, helping someone where they are. How do we get through a period of time? How do we get through in a way that's not going to be disruptive toward the morale of others? So, setting sort of an expectation in place and setting ground rules so everyone understands this is how we work back and forth. This is how we create an environment of support and trust, and that we don't have anyone abusing that environment. So
a question just came to me. So with, HR, and you have the leadership in there having the meetings, is there ever a time where you guys be like, all right, let's bring the employer in and see what their mindset is of how the job is going for them? Because I feel like sometimes at jobs they have the meetings, but they don't have the people that actually put in the footwork in those meetings to maybe give some suggestions. Not say, oh, let's change everything, but hey, okay, this is what you guys see, but this is what I see because I'm out there. Do those conversations happen where, like, let's bring those people in? Because I feel like companies don't really listen to the people that are at the bottom.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things an employee can do is participating in things like employee satisfaction surveys, employee engagement surveys, focus groups. When someone asks you for your opinion, that you're willing to go and put it forward in a healthy way, in a solution-minded way. If you go in and you're like, let's just burn it all down, that's really not going to get everybody to where they need to be. But just saying, honestly, this is, I'm speaking from my heart here. This is what I see, and I think that's a place where people are very naturally engaged. There are opportunities typically within companies that they'll put together a committee, or, they'll have a meeting, and it's saying, raising your hand and saying, yeah, I want to be a part of it, and working with your leadership to free you up for the time to participate in it. For companies that have formal programs for, going through and redesigning processes or redesigning products or getting marketing feedback. Typically, they will directly involve employees who are in that work stream, who are a part of that workflow. So if you're, doing a Kaizen project to reevaluate the process flow, they'll have people who are actually doing that work coming in to help say, here's where we are today, and this is what we'd like to see it change to tomorrow. And those, it's harder when you're a part of a smaller business, when you're leading a smaller group. But how do you, especially in that leadership perspective, find the people that, are willing to raise their hands, and then, are you able to engage, and can you trust, them to do that? Because I think one challenge of entrepreneurs is they have a vision. They want to go out there and they're going to burn to move forward and get it done and just drive. And at some point, the true challenge of delegation begins, where leaders have to be able to delegate, share the end result of what they'd like to see, and then do those measures along the way, but not in a micromanaging way. And I'll see you down the road, and let's see where you're at the finish line. Checking in along the way, but giving them the freedom. And the hard part, I'd say, especially in small businesses at that leadership level, you're going to see people coming up with doing things in a way that maybe you wouldn't do it that way. So having, giving people space to come to a different right answer, to give people the space to fall down in a safe way. That the power of where we learn is where we fail. You can't fall down and not figure out how to stand back up. And that standing back up is where all the learning takes place. So you have to give them that room to go out and try new things. And that all ties back to that human element. And, you can't send somebody off to do a job and be there for every minute of it. You got to give them that freedom to go.
Yeah. That's, you said a lot there, because I know, can't really say a whole lot, but I know a person in a business that's like that. That's all I'm going to say. Like the micromanaging and all that. It's like, I'm the type of person, you tell me what the goal is, the results you want to get done, I'm going to get those results. It's not going to look like how you thought it was going to look. And that's just me. Like, I work a certain way. And I think what you said, a good thing is, like, leaders have to listen and be open-minded. Not saying you got to, change up the flow just because they said something, but actually listen, because it might be like, let's try this. And it might actually work, rather than, I'm the big boss man, I don't even want to talk. It's like, hey, good morning. You can't say good morning, but I'm working for you. That don't really sit well with people. And I think the leaders forget that they were at a certain place. Because think about entrepreneur. You had to think creative to get your business started. To whatever you did, you had to think outside the box. So if you bring somebody in and they think outside the box, you can't say no, because you used to be that person. And I think sometimes people fail to realize you used to be that person. So give them a shot. Like, see if they actually, because somebody gave you a shot. And when a leader just, I'm the boss man or the boss woman, you're going to listen to me, this is how it's going to run. That's why you have a lot of turnover rate, because nobody want to work for you. Like, it's like, okay, this is a good company, I can make some money, but I don't like the way you talk to me. I don't like how, can I work while you over my shoulder? And I've been places like that. And I think that's where a lot of entrepreneurs are created, because, like, I don't want to work for them. I'd rather do this myself. And that's where, like you said before, you're learning the human resources. You're learning these different things. So when you actually bring someone in, you kind of like, okay, I know what to do. Or you just don't let somebody come in and be like, okay, I'm human resources, I'm just going to do this. And then you're like, hold on, this don't sound right. I remember this from, and I think it starts with people having that open mind and being able to communicate, because everybody can't be Michael Jordan. Somebody got to be John Paxson. Somebody got to be Steve Kerr. Somebody got to be Bill Winnington. Like, you can't have, everybody can't be. And I think that's what human resources is the behind the scenes person. It's like,
and as you're mentioning all of those players, you don't want them to all be the same.
Yeah.
They're all filling different roles.
Yeah.
They're all meeting different expectations. They're all working in different ways to come together as a team. And in those moments when somebody is doing their job and doing it really well, you let them roll with that, and then you find new ways to challenge them, to keep them growing, to engage with them, or having that discussion with them if they don't want to grow. Like, that beyond the daily, this is how the ebb and flow of my job goes. If they're satisfied in their career and this is what they're wanting to do, it's sharing with them, okay, you're meeting the expectations of the job, you're getting the job position done, you're living within a certain pay band, and that's going to impact things as well. You can't go beyond that. But, finding out, having that question with everybody, what is your job, to to you? What do you want to do? What is your vision moving forward? How do you want to keep growing? Finding out what are your motivators, like having a discussion with your people, what really fuels you right now. Those are all discussions and elements that a small business owner can have with their staff to continue to give them work to grow them. And then as a company gets bigger and they find themselves bringing on an HR person, it's also for a leader hard to sometimes own up to and sort of embrace. And they were a stopgap HR person. They weren't doing the full thing, the full deal. They were getting through doing the doggy paddle to stay with head above water. When you bring in an HR expert, when somebody is sort of schooled and trained in the world of HR, they're going to think of things that you hadn't before as a business leader. They're going to ask you questions that will probably challenge you. And it's just keeping yourself open and thinking, how can I now refocus my time? But then where do I also have to stay plugged in? And a lot of that, huge importance to communication at that point, so that you have HR and the other leaders on the same page together as that continued growth occurs.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like in a company, to ask, like, hey, do you want to grow? Because some people is like, oh, I'm cool. I don't really want any more responsibilities. But then there's some people that do want the responsibility. It's like, okay, well, I need you to be doing this, and this if you want to grow. But that's a good question to ask someone, like, do you want to grow in a company? Like, because some companies will have like scholarships or different stuff that they can, grow in. And then even with you saying like bringing the HR person, challenging the leader, now someone's challenging you and you really can't be like, well, I'm the big man. Well, okay, big man, go ahead, do what you need to do. And now you're like, oh, well, all right, I'm going to listen. All right, I'm going to do this. And it's funny you say like, ask a question to challenge, because I think one of my not weaknesses, I don't know how you would put it, but I do something until the challenge is met, and then I don't like to do it because it turns into a routine. And it's like, okay, do I need to keep challenging myself, or is this, after I finish this challenge, do I need to make that a routine? And I was talking to my buddy, and it's like, so if you do a sit-up challenge, right? Sometimes I do a sit-up challenge for that month. I did it for that month. Now I need to make it a routine because it'll be healthy for me, but I don't, because it's like, oh, I finished the month. Let me keep going. And that's kind of like in a job. It's like, okay, you got employee of the month. Do you want the employee of the year? Do you want a raise? Do you want this? And it's like, do you want to be in a company that does challenge you? Because some companies you just work for and it's all right. This is all right. Like in the school system, I know a lady, she been working almost longer. She probably working almost longer than I've been alive. And it's like, they ain't gave you no raise that you should still be working here. I feel like certain jobs, like if you're here for 10 years and you still getting paid like you work here for 5, there's something wrong.
Well, it's looking, and this is another part of the HR world where you're looking at, the job that's being done and what the associated salary is for that. Mm-hmm. You're arriving at that through data and research. So, finding that basis of, what is an appropriate pay scale for that position. And then once again, taking care of your people who've been with you and looking at where they fall in terms of their competence within that range. So, but every position will typically have an end to that range. So that's where, you're looking to develop and grow your skill, or your turning it more so into, I'm going to stay in this position, I'm going to continue to evolve. But how, that situation may turn into, how as a leader, can I keep this person fueled and wanting to grow and have that rich pool of knowledge and experience go back to benefit others. So, now maybe it's an additional duty beyond sort of what has been done that's going to help that person continue to grow and is going to circle back and benefit the organization. So can we use them, as a subject matter expert? Could we have them training or mentoring others, building the way they connect back in? Or are they really just genuinely satisfied with where they're at, and they're like, yeah, I don't want anything more. So that's where all of this circles around into performance and understanding that connection between how we've defined a job, what the actual job that you're doing is, and making sure that those two match up, and then having that plan for continued growth and development. And what does that look like, so that no matter where you're at in your career, you're always growing, you're always developing, and sort of taking on new steps for fuel. Because, I think we all understand sort of that you get to learn yourself as you go on in your career. Like, you're going to do those sit-ups for a month. And when that month is done, you're going to say goodbye to that habit.
Yeah.
So what are the things that you can do if you have to keep going and you have to keep doing the sit-ups and you have to keep that routine in place? What are the other things that you're going to do to give yourself the energy to push through? So while I'm doing this routine thing and I don't enjoy routine, what is the work reward that I'm going to give myself? So I'm going to do these sit-ups every day, but threaded in there, I'm going to take 15 minutes to do this really interesting interview, or I'm going to go and network and meet new people, or I'm going to brainstorm and come up with ideas. And the energy that I get from that is going to fuel me through doing all those sit-ups that I really don't want to do. But it keeps you connected and keeps you a part of your environment. And for the people that I like doing my routine, I like doing the same thing every day. Well, I'm going to have to go get uncomfortable for a while. And by doing my routine, that's going to give me the fuel that I need to go and do something a little off the chart, off the norm. So that, learn yourself, use things like assessments to find that out, and work with leadership to set those goals, and leaders, help set the goals so that you can turn things into a win-win.
Yeah, I like what you said. It's like you got to add value. So I was a teacher assistant when I first started in the school system. I'm like, okay, this is cool, but yeah, I don't get to go to meetings. I don't get to no say so and nothing. And we're at the bottom of the totem pole. So I work my way up to show them, like, okay, if the main teacher's not here, nothing goes out of order. Like, the class keeps going. Then I created a mentor program through outside of my classroom. So I'm adding value in the school. Now they're like, okay, yeah, he can add value. Now, I got more responsibility. Now, the pay didn't go up. I'm like, okay, I'm doing a whole lot here. Ain't nothing changed with this pay. I got to leave. Because if I'm adding more value than the job description and it's benefiting, then I feel like, okay, there's somewhere y'all got to cut something, a quarter, 50 cents, $1, something. And I went somewhere else and I got uncomfortable by being a preschool teacher. I'm like, oh, no, these little jokers. No, this is not it. But now I'm a kindergarten teacher, but I went from assistant and understanding my role and understanding adding value to the different schools that I was at. Now I got a head job, don't have the education, don't none of that, just took a test. And it's like, if you're able to add value, you want to make sure that you're compensated. Don't just add value at a job and
Although I'm going to challenge you on one point. If you're adding value, you're stepping up, you're doing things, you should also be having the conversation to what end. So having that discussion with a person that you report to or another leader in the organization to really say, here's the end point that I'm going for. I'd like you as my leadership to help me get there. And if given those opportunities, it's sort of a trade-off there.
Yeah.
So you're getting something for what you're giving. And when you arrive at that endpoint and you've achieved that next hurdle, and you've arrived at a place where, okay, it's time that I now want this next step position, or it's going to be time for me to go somewhere else to do that. It's keeping in touch with each other, from a leader to an employee, to say, where am I in that journey? Where are you in helping me in that journey? And is it my time, either to move up internally or to seek something externally?
That definitely makes sense, because I think I didn't want to leave my first job. Like, I loved the kids and all that, and it was like I went to the people like, hey, yeah, I don't have another position or anything of that sort. And that's when, in the Pike Township, that's when the money was funny. So I'm like, oh, I got to get out of here, because I don't know if I even have a job or they might cut. So as soon as I leave, the pay goes up. I'm like, but I wouldn't have got the head teaching job. I wouldn't be where I'm at today. So I definitely get what you're saying, because like when I came into this school, it's like, hey, I got a podcast, I do this. If that podcast money starts outweighing this, I'm gone. I'm like, I won't leave you high and dry, but I'm gonna leave. Like, why would I?
That's the key, though. You've had that discussion, and they know where you're growing and where you're wanting to get to, how that benefits you on a daily, because you get that energy, you get that sort of surge in purpose. And whether you've got an HR person to run those discussions or you're a business leader having those individually, it's all tying into that work environment that you're creating. So it's a place that people want to come to, that you're building each other up, that you're challenging each other to move forward. Big part of it is having that shared vision, so that everyone understands, where are we trying to get to, how are we going to get there through our mission, and then setting that performance. These are everyone is going off in their own direction to try and drive to what the company is termed as success.
Yeah, and definitely, and it's like, I kind of like, hey, don't give me no super big role, because who knows, if I get a check cut, who knows when, because it's like, I can't help that I'm who I am, so I'm going to add value regardless. I'm going to do over and beyond, especially when it comes to kids. So it's like, they like, a teacher in kindergarten, she left. That was like, wonder who's going to take that. It was like, we good, we got you. And it's like, okay, I get what's going on. I appreciate that, but then it's like, I can't like lean on that, because that's not the end goal. And that, like you said, like maybe another job or a younger me, I might not have had that conversation. Like, hey, I got this going on, and I'm gonna be here as long as as possible, but I do have other things outside of here. And I think when you do allow the job to know that, and then they see what you have going on, and if they can help, they'll help. And like you said, that communication is very important. And throughout the whole conversation, that's kind of what we've talked about, is having communication in the job and being honest, but not too honest, because I know me, I can be a little too honest. And sometimes your honesty can come off as aggression or dominance, and somebody will take it wrong. So you kind of got to know the needs of others and be able to still be honest with them, because everybody can't take honest. People take honesty as assholeness, and I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I'm just honest. I don't really see the a-hole. I mean, back in my younger days. But what are 3 tips for a small business, or maybe a business that's right there to become a big business, that they need to know the importance of having a strong HR team? Because listening to you and understanding it more, it's like, this is very important to have those people on your team to be able to do the hiring, the firing, the paperwork, the different things that you might not want to do. So what are 3 like important things that people need to understand of why they need to have like that good HR team that's really helpful to the business, and not just have, just some people that do HR?
Yeah. And that can happen where you just
Yeah.
sort of, I'll fake it till I make it sort of a thing.
Yeah.
Well, you want to be very careful around that because you can end up with a lot of fines and fees and just not being the employer you want to be. So, having an HR presence, I would say, to really understand the work that's being done so that you're hiring the right people that you need to do the work, and you're understanding how to make people satisfied where they are. So that whole onboarding, job definition, getting people in the door and understanding. HR is there to help drive that component of safety as well. So how do we make sure that we have a fair, equitable work environment where basic needs are being met, that we're meeting the laws, the expectations there, and that we're making sure that people are cared for in the way that we need to as an employer. And then, honestly, for that third component, it's looking at ending the life cycle of an employee's journey. So when they're offboarding, when they're leaving, what that looks like, and how do you do it in a way where you're being respectful of their continued journey. You've been able to benefit each other. You cherish them as they go. So when their time comes back around, they wouldn't hesitate to return to your organization should that opportunity come up. So, having that opportunity all through the experience, whether they're coming, they're going, or they're coming, they're growing, or they're going, that you have something all along the way to create an environment that is respectful and equitable.
That makes a lot of sense of everything you said. I like the last part because it seems like the importance is like the employee to understand, like, hey, you're here. We want you to grow. If you just want to stay where you're at, you can stay where you're at. But if you want to grow, and if you do have an end goal, communicate that. And having that type of business or having that type of HR around, that would make a person want to work that job and want to stay there rather than, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I don't know. I might not, who knows what could happen in a year, or whatever could happen. But when you like, hey, where do you see yourself going or growing, or where you at in life, and understanding, because sometimes people don't respect the person's outside endeavors, or, that's just a hobby or whatever. But I like what you said. Definitely would like to, that's the type of HR that you want around. So I didn't tell you, but all guests, they have to have a quote. It could be your quote. It could be a quote that you read. It could be a quote that you live by, but I need a quote.
I can give you my personal mission. That's the one thing, a long time ago, when I started my career in the training and development path, I went to a place that said you have to come up with your personal mission. So everything I do in life ties back to this one. So my purpose in my business world is creating possibilities for human development. So that's my tagline. And that's probably the only quote that I have in this moment under these lights.
And that's why I sometimes do it, just to see what, people, what kind of quote, or like you said, a mission, or sometimes it might have been something you saw today. So I love that. So tell people how they can reach you on social media or just the internet, because everybody that's a successful underdog isn't always on social media. I've learned that.
And for me, I'm definitely out there because I definitely want to be reached. I'm doing my very best to create learning opportunities for HR folks that I'm connected to, and I'm available on LinkedIn through my name, Miriam Posluszny, and then I have an Instagram account, which is Miriam at MB, and that sort of goes through how I'm committed to living my values and living through McGohan Brabender. They have a set of values that they encourage us to, as employees, we've all agreed to adhere to these values. And that's sort of the story of what I'm doing and how I'm expressing those values daily at work. Although I'm not good at posting daily, so I should say probably weekly or monthly. But yeah, that's the two ways to get me: LinkedIn and Instagram.
And definitely will have the spelling of her name. 'Cause if I heard it, I wouldn't be able to spell it offhand. So again, I appreciate you, and I'm glad we were able to connect and get you on the show. You know, you're sorry that your son beat you to being the first to get to the podcast, but we're going to say this episode is going to be better. We're just going to say that.
Yeah,
Sorry.
my son Nick got a podcast ahead of me, and he sent that to me. He did his yesterday. So beat me by.
Well, really, if we didn't have to reschedule, you would have beat him.
I would have. So close.
And that was on me because I totally forgot I was on somebody else's, and I totally forgot, and they reminded me that day. So I do apologize. But again, thank you. I learned a lot about HR and just learning, like, being like a small business at the moment, like the angle that I would want to go as a business, and just learning. So I appreciate you. And I always
didn't
ask,
take you through the painful parts of like payroll taxes.
Yeah,
and,
well, yeah,
and all that.
Because I know
we're not going to go down
it's
that
a lot.
route.
It's a lot more that we could have dove into, but I think just the surface level of it and understanding, like, leaderships, like people that are a business or people that are employees can listen and learn a lot from either way, because I learned from both sides of how to have the right people around, and then as an employee, like, understanding what HR is now, and it's not the bad person that when you get caught in the HR, it's like, all right,
we're the center of the triangle.
Yeah.
We're there for the business, but we're there for the people. And it's keeping everything in balance, and hopefully keeping it in a place where everyone can really be happy to go every day.
On that note, peace, one love.